We're ready.
All right. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the local assessment review board to order. The mandate of this board is to make decisions based on evidence provided to it during the hearing and in accordance with the principles of procedural fairness. My name is Robert Bennington, and I'll be chairing this hearing. All questions, comments shall be directed through me. I'm going to begin by having the panel introduce themselves. I'll start with Renee.
Renee Clements.
Hank Leefrank, last name is spelled L-E-E-F-E-R-I-N-K.
The clerks, will you please introduce yourselves?
Yes, I am Jody Hipkin, co-clerking with
Alicia Follett.
The clerks of the Assessment Review Board, they're employees of Legal and Legislative Services, and they will accompany the board in camera for drafting purposes only. The clerk is not a member of the board and does not participate in any decision making. I'm going to have the parties introduce themselves. First, we'll hear from the complainant. Scott.
So I'm Scott McIntyre. Sorry, my wife Joy cannot make it today. My address is 203 Redtail Ridge Southeast, High River, Alberta, Thomas 1 Victor 0 Juliet 8. And my, oh, I thought it was on this. Sorry, I was looking for the lot number address in here, but I don't see it. Oh, so roll number 15083500.
And Scott, are you the owner of this property?
I am, sir.
Could we have the respondent, please?
My name is Stuart Dalrymple. I'm the appointed assessor for the town of High River.
And with you?
Yeah, I'm Brandon Garner, assessor with the town of High River.
Thank you. So the hearing is going to proceed as follows. First of all, I call for any preliminary matters that need to be addressed.
Could I quickly ask, so you're both, or all three of you are local assessment review boards? And with what titles do you have with that? Just titles of that?
Member.
Sorry?
We're members.
Members. Okay, thank you.
And the chair is called the presiding officer. So seeing that there's no preliminary matters, I'll have the complainant present their evidence, followed by questions from the respondent and the panel.
and
I'm
Scott.
just going to continue for a minute.
Oh, sorry.
So then I'm just going to sort of lay out the process. Then the complainant will give all their evidence, followed by questions from the respondent and the panel. Then the respondent will present their evidence, followed by questions by the complainant and the panel. The complainant will present any rebuttal evidence, followed by questions from the respondent and the panel. And then finally the respondent will give their closing arguments, followed by the complaint's closing argument. So the complainant gets the last word. Does anyone have any questions regarding the process of this hearing? Let the record show that there are no questions. Also, does anyone have any objection to the composition of this board?
I only have one question. I'm sorry that I didn't put in, there's a timeline mentioned in the MGA document that I was supposed to let you guys know how much time it was going to take to do this. I did not do that. It should only take, I know if you're going to do the closing remarks at the end, we'll take that out, but I think this should take me like 5 or 6 minutes.
Thank you. I've been here for 5 or 6 hours at times. So everybody's okay with the board, and so also I'd like to inform all parties, and I think you know this, that the hearing is being recorded. Okay, Scott, the floor is yours.
So good morning and thank you for your time. We are appealing our 2025 assessment for 203 Redtail Ridge Southeast. primarily due to the lack of transparency, inequity, and concerns about true market value. Our home was recently reassessed on June 23rd, 2026 by Brandon Gardner of the Town of High River Assessment Department at 1700 hours. Following this, we received the respondent's disclosure dated June 30th, 2026 from the Town of High River Assessment Steward Del Rempel at 2200 hours by email. We reviewed the respondent's disclosure along with representation and have several questions and concerns to ask at this appeals to the Assessment Review Board today, July 8th, 2026. So we feel the assessor has not adequately demonstrated the assessment value, that the assessment value reflects market values as of July 1st, 2025. And portions of the assessment appear to rely upon undocumented or unexplained adjustments to valuation inputs, quality, classification, and component values following the appeal recent inspection. So some of my core defense parts are the market value. The Assessment Review Board's task is to determine what the property would have sold for on July 1st, 2025. The board is not deciding whether the town fixed its software, corrected historical under-assessments, or finally applied foothills coefficients correctly. My reasonings: the assessments do not prove assessments. Actual sale evidence must support valuation. The lack of qualified adjustments. The town's assessment refers to difference in lot sizes, garage sizes, residential size, basement developments, but does not disclose the dollar adjustments. Subjectable changes following the complaint. Objective corrections such as a finished basement areas may be legitimate to a percentage. Subjective changes such as standard to custom classifications require explanation and supporting criteria. The town's own statement creates a problem. The town assessment states the property was classified as custom and at annexation and remained unchanged. If component classifications changed after inspection, the town should explain what changed. Missing calculations in the chain. The town relies heavily on Foothills base values and coefficients, but has not disclosed the base value or the sequence of adjustments leading to the final value. The residential ratepayers report. The existence of component level valuation reports suggest that the town possesses additional detail regarding improvement value and classification. Cost approach. If the home is considered custom, the town should identify which custom justify that designation. Missing quality and criteria grading. No grading manual, scoring sheet, or quality schedule appears to have been disclosed. Comparable sales issues. The town still bears the burden of demonstrating why this subject property belongs to the assessed value. So my questions now, based on the market value questions: what arm's length sales support the $1,060,000? Which sales is most comparable? What adjustments were applied to those sales? The methodology: is the assessor relying on actual sales or model outputs? What part of the model should be applied in 2023 and 2024? What would the 2024 assessments have been if the model functioned correctly? Calculation chain questions. Was the Foothills base land value? What was the Foothills base land values? What was the Foothills base improvement value? What adjustments were applied by the town of High River? What was the sequence of calculations leading to the $1,060,000? Classification questions. What changes were factual corrections, which involved the assessor's judgment? What physical characteristics caused the most recent inspection to classify, to move from a standard to custom? This is the same furnace that was built originally. Was the HVAC system replaced or upgraded from build? No, it was original. Was grading schedule what grading schedule supports this change? Quality grading questions: which components were coded as custom? Which components were coded as standard? What scores qualifies as custom? Component evaluation questions: does a residential rate report exist? What is used in preparing or defending the assessment? And can it be produced? And I believe you said my points of defense. Can I read that now with my closing remarks after, or does that come after?
What we're looking for is the evidence.
So my closing points of defense is the market value has not demonstrated through adjusted arm's length sales. The only sales that were looked at were all of our Redtail property sales, no other properties in Foothills County. There's a recent property at Redtail Silvertip Ranch that just went up for sale. I don't know the realtor, but I seen it in the paper. It was listed for 1.17 million, and it has like 4.5 acres.
So that's not really part of your evidence because
It's part of the Foothills assessment that the town was supposed to use.
right, but the evidence that you submitted.
It don't matter, I'll leave that out then.
Okay.
So market value has not demonstrated through adjusted arm's length sales. The town of High River assessment process relies heavily on models and assessments rather than direct market evidence. Quantified adjustments to comparable sales have not been disclosed. Subjective classifications changed following inspection without explanation. Criteria supporting those classifications have not been disclosed. The underlying Foothills values and calculations chain have not been disclosed. Without those inputs, the Assessment Review Board cannot determine whether the assessment reflects market value. Factual corrections, model coefficients, or discretionary grading changes. And then I'll leave my closing remarks for the end.
Yeah, you will have an opportunity to rebut the response.
I do, yes.
Stuart, do you have any questions of the complainants?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'll kind of leave that for when we go through our submission. And if the complainant has any questions, and we can, I think a lot of these questions can be answered in our submission.
Go ahead and present your evidence.
All right, thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. Happy to represent the town here as the appointed assessor for the town to speak to the assessment for 203 Redtail Ridge in Redtail Rise. I'll just go through the slide, the screen, Jody, if that's all right, eh? So if we can scroll down to just page 7. Is that okay, guys, or it's better to go off the page? Whatever the easiest. So, as the complainant mentioned, roll number is 1508-3500. The property is 203 Redtail Ridge. The legal description is Plan 181040, Block 1, Lot 19. Registered owners are Scott and Joy McIntyre. The property is an annexed residential property. Sits on a 0.37 acre parcel. Land designation is annexed. And the zoning, I believe, came from Foothills County, Country Estate Residential Subdistrict A. The structure is a single-family dwelling, built in 2018. The square footage is 1,831 square feet, with a current 2025 assessment of $1,060,500. The base year, of course, is 2025. I'm presenting at the hearing, and Brandon Garner is also accompanying me here. We're the assessors for the town. So just turn to page 8. Most of you are aware of where the property sits within the town. Just to show you where Redtail Rise is. In the blue box, just south of town there. And just turn to the next page. It shows page 9. Just shows where Redtail Rise is, and the subject property is 203, highlighted there. So just turning to, this is just some property information that follows. So on page 10, this is the building permit for the house when it was built. It was built in 2018. At that time, it was within Foothills County. That gets the building permit value of $700,000. And then on the next page, it was hard to get a copy of the blueprints that were legible, but we have access to them. We did, because the property was appealed, we wanted to check the dimensions of the house to make sure they're correct. And just a summary of the sizes. On the top right there, it says main floor area 1831, basement development 1,009 square feet. There's no upper, and the garage is 850 square feet. Just the highlight of the areas. And then on page 12 is our outcard drawing of the property. This shows the footprint of the building and the garage and the veranda, and then of the basement area that's finished in the basement. The following are pictures of the subject property within Redtail Rise. These are from our pictometry. They're a little off, but just to show you the lot relative to the house. We just got some pictures. My fellow assessor Brandon went to the property and took some pictures. The complaining candidates have access to the house and have a look around, so that was appreciated. So just a picture of the front and back of the house on page 14, same on 15. The view on top of page 16, just the view to the west. And then 16, just kind of go through the pictures, the front door. On page 17, this is the entry to the house. At the bottom of page 17, the living room. And page 18 shows the dining area relative to the kitchen. Page 18 at the bottom is the kitchen. And just show the construction of the house within Redtail Rise. It's fairly typical for that neighborhood. Page 19 shows the kitchen and dining area. Bottom of 19 is the kitchen. Bottom of page 20, I believe, is the main bathroom on the main floor. On 21 is the master suite and the master bathroom. Top of page 22 is the other half of the master bath, and then at the bottom of page 22 is the laundry room. Top of page 23 is the cloakroom area. Bottom of page 23 shows the stair access to the basement. Top of page 24 is stairs coming into the basement area, and at the bottom, just looking from the stairs into the basement finished area.
Walkout basement.
Yeah, the basement's a walkout basement there, top of page 24. Yeah, right there. Thanks, Joey. And then on page 25 is a small stove at the end of the basement. Again, bottom of page 25, just the basement finish. 26 is the basement bedroom, and bottom of 26 is the basement bathroom. And then at the top of page 27 is the finish in the garage. So on page 28, this assessment summary is the current assessment, is what we call a repair report for the subject property. So again, it just goes through the salient details that we mentioned at the beginning, the size of the house. It's got forced air heat, it's got slab heat in the basement, and it identifies the plumbing as the pictures indicate. and the attached garage is insulated and drywalled and heated. So for the total assessment of $1,060,500. Upon inspection of the property, we noticed some changes, and just because we inspected the property, we just have to sort of, if there's any changes, just to highlight those. We're not suggesting that these should be added at all for this assessment. Typically, we don't do that. If there's any changes to a house, even in the inquiry period, we typically don't do it. We'll just add those changes next year. But as we were at the property, we noticed some changes were different from what we had on page 28. So these are just a note that there's some differences. So we're not suggesting that we're going to change this assessment for this year or for the purposes of this hearing. Just that we're at a property, we don't always get the opportunity to look inside someone's houses, and when they're charitable enough to let us in and have a look around, we have to make sure we just have to do what we do as assessors to correct the data. So the changes were made, I just highlighted the half bath in the basement, the freestanding stove. We actually removed, there was a ground level deck, we took that off.
Sorry, what did you say, ground what?
There was a ground level deck, it was a concrete area. We don't typically add those concrete areas, so we removed that.
Thank you.
And we adjusted the base and finish. We didn't have base and finish in this house, so in our records, and so it was added. So that was just, we were unaware of that up until the time of inspection. So if these changes were made, it would make a difference of what we have. This year's assessment would be $54,700. We're not suggesting to add that. It's just that upon inspection and correcting the data, that's what the value would be if we added those features we didn't have. That's all. So we're not. It's just a point. It's more for information than to state we're going to change the assessment. It's not our practice. We don't do that, right? So legislative authority for evaluation of property. The process of assessment is heavily regulated. We use the Municipal Government Act and matters related to assessment and taxation. Property assessments must be an estimate of value, fee simple ownership, the condition of the property as of December 31st, in this case 2025. The assessment of property must reflect typical market conditions. Be an estimate of value as of July 1, 2025, based on open market sales and representing sales transactions between a willing seller and a willing buyer. So page 31, we've got several sections of the MDA and MRAT that are included in the assessment. I'll just mention a few of them. If any are referenced later, I'm happy to go over them again. I've got a copy of the MRAT with me as well, so if there's any questions, happy to answer to that. So assessments of property must reflect the conditions of property on December 31st, valuation date as of July the 1st, and market value. It's mentioned in the complainant's submission often, and quite rightly so. That's the process of assessment. So market value is the amount of the property, as defined in section 284 1R, might be expected to realize if it's sold on the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. For assessment purposes, under MRAT, matters related to assessment and taxation, section 5, an assessment must be prepared using mass appraisal, must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property, and must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. And I'll just read that last part again. Must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to the property, not exactly like the property. On page 32, again, the assessment must be prepared in accordance with the Act. Must be an estimate of the value of the property on July 1 of the assessment year, which is the year before the tax year. I'll get into mass appraisal later, but here, according to matters related to assessment and taxation, section 1G, mass appraisal means a process preparing assessments for a group of properties, using standard methods and common data and allowing for statistical testing. An assessment of property based on market value must be prepared using mass appraisal, must be an estimate of the fee simple estate of the property, must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property, not the same as the property, similar. And valuation model. This is important too in the mass appraisal process. It means the representation of the relationship between property characteristics and their value in a real estate market using mass appraisal. And the quality standards that we are required to follow. These are very strict. If we don't meet the required quality standards, at the time of submitting our role to provincial government, they can quash out, they can say we can't send out assessment notices if we don't meet these quality standards. So it states, for any stratum of the property type described in the following table, the quality standards set out in the table must be met in the preparation of assessments. So for properties of 1, 2 or 3 dwelling units, the median assessment ratio of the must be between 0.95 and 105, and the coefficient of dispersion must be 0.15. I'll kind of get into that later, explain what that means. Let's see here. The last one I have here is annexation order. When the Redtail Rise was annexed into the town, I've got a copy of it, I'll get to it later. Let me see here, I've got it in the addendum. Just a sec. Yeah, if you go to page 55 of the addendum. Sorry, Jody.
55?
55, yes. Oh, one more. Actually, no. No, 55? Yeah, the page numbers at the bottom, yeah. Sorry, I'm just to reference it, that's all.
No, I'll get there, sorry.
All good.
Nobody look or they're gonna get busy. This guy.
There we go. So this is the annexation order for the Redtail Rise. So it's under, at the bottom says, under section 125, at the very bottom of the page. Just scroll down a bit further, just a tad further, there we go, it's at the bottom in the section 125. So this is important for the subject property relative to it being in Redtail Rise. It was annexed into the town under this agreement, and we'll be referring to this later. So for reference, the annexation agreement, I think the whole thing is in here. So just for reference. But I've got screenshots of the part relative to assessment tax. So we're going to go back to page 34. Actually, let's go to page 35, please, Jody. So he's referenced to the annexation agreement. So I'll just read it. The assessments of the properties in the Redtail Ridge development are completed in accordance with the guidelines established and identified within the annexation agreement included in addendum page 55 to 59. So the excerpt, this is taken from this part that's highlighted in the box, number 4. This comes from that annexation agreement. And it reads, for the purpose of taxation in 2021 and each subsequent year up to and including 2034, the annexed land and accessible improvements to it must be assessed on the same basis if they had remained in Foothills County, and again must be taxed in the town of High River in respect of each assessment class that applies to the annexed land and accessible improvements to it using the tax rate established by Foothills County or the town of High River, whichever is the lowest for the property of the same assessment class. So just in the table underneath that, the excerpt from the annexation agreement, just the term must, for purposes of legislation, must means a compulsory or mandatory requirement. There is no discretion. It's not may or should. I don't know, should actually might be more, but when it says must, there's no discretion. It has to be followed. So for the assessments in Redtail Rise and all the other annexation agreements in the town of High River, and this Redtail Rise isn't the only one. They are assessed as if they still existed in the Foothills County. So I guess an important note for Redtail Rise properties. Redtail Rise properties are neither classified nor valued with similar properties in High River. So any of the mass appraisal processes we use in High River, modeling, mass appraisal, review of sales, comparable sales, analysis, none of that is used in Redtail Rise or any of the other annex properties. We receive the market. We reflect the market from Foothills County in the annex in the valuation of all the annex properties. So just on page 36, just about data collection and verification, we're required to follow a re-inspection process as by legislation. So we inspect 20% of the properties every year. We haven't conducted a re-inspection cycle in Redtail Rise. There were a few houses existing there at the time of the annexation agreement. I will say that there's been, because of the interest, I've talked to a lot of property owners in Redtail Rise, and the 2012 annexation agreement is up this year, so we'll be inspecting all of those properties, and every house in Redtail Rise will get our full attention this year. We'll be inspecting every house, right? We'll knock on all the doors. We'll be talking to all of the good residents of Redtail Rise. There's been a lot of interest. Yes, we need to do due diligence. We need to make sure it's our mandate that we're going to make sure that those assessments are as clean and as accurate as possible by the end of this year. So that's our commitment. It hasn't been on our radar for the re-inspection cycle, but it will be this year. So that will be our commitment to the residents of Redtail Rise. And then I guess on a side note, our process is transparent. I've spent lots of time with people in annex properties and in Redtail Rise. I spent long conversations with many of the property owners, and especially Scott, right? And I understand and respect everyone's feelings and emotions and about the process and about the value. I'm unapologetic. I will. My door is wide open all the time, every year. We don't just talk to people in the inquiry period. We'll talk to people, property owners, treat them respectfully, and share as much information as we can. That is our commitment to the town. Our doors never closed. Anyway, on page 36, this is just a waiver about inspecting properties and the referencing information of the assessment review board. Page 37 gets approach evaluation. We use cost approach. We use direct sales approach for the evaluation of residential properties. I get to read the definition for the evaluation of assessment properties in High River and Foothills County. That needs to be referenced as well. The direct comparison approach is used. This method of evaluation determines a property's value by comparing it to similar, recently sold properties in the same geographic area. So we're talking about mass appraisal compared to single property appraisal. They are different processes. I'll just read the definition on the top. So single property appraisal is evaluation of one property for many different purposes and as of a specific valuation date. Uses 3 to 5 comparable sales as close in location, style, and quality and construction to the subject property to arrive at an estimated value based on those comparables. Mass appraisal is the valuation of an entire group of properties for taxation purposes. Evaluation date is one date a year, July the 1st, and condition as of December 31st in that year, of the year preceding the tax year. Evaluation model is developed for each group with a similar style and quality of construction. An equitable and consistent estimate of value is derived for each property group. Each value model is statistically tested for accuracy. and after meeting the required provincial testing, is submitted to ASSET, which is the provincial government. So, page 39. So, the master appraisal process, as we've just kind of summarized, similar properties are grouped and classified accordingly. Sales within each group are reviewed and valuation models are developed to reflect the typical marketplace. These models are then statistically tested to ensure they meet the required provincial quality standards. So for the valuation of annexed properties, as directed by the annexation agreement, and with regard to the residential properties identified, the annexed land and improvements to it must be assessed on the same basis as if they had remained in Foothills County. So for the duration of the annexation agreement, this is until 2034. So for classification of all the annexed properties must be consistent with the classification of similar homes within Foothills County. And the valuation models applied to these properties are determined by Foothills County, determined by sales of each respective market area surrounding High River and subsequently audited by Municipal Affairs. So in the town of High River and every municipality in Alberta where we have to follow provincial standard, that is a consistent standard all municipalities follow that ensures a consistent application of mass appraisal, the mass appraisal process. When we submit values to the province, we submit total values. We don't submit coefficients, we don't submit models, we don't submit them to the provincial government. We don't submit them to property owners. We're not required to. The valuation models are not appealable. We do not get into the nuts and bolts of the valuation coefficients, all the ingredients of those models. We're required to gather and classify homes consistently into consistent groups. That when the province gets that information, they tend to audit those groups by value range. So we don't disclose coefficients. I can share an excerpt from matters related to assessment and taxation under section 33.3. It says information prescribed in subsections 1 and 2. That means information we're required to provide property owners does not include coefficients. We are not required to share, and we don't get into those details, and for a very good reason. If we had to changes, we do mass appraisal, so we're assessing every house, every property, commercial and industrial properties in High River every year. If we change heating system, for whatever reason we decide is appropriate, we can't ensure that those changes are consistently applied for every other property, but we do our best to make sure that those properties are all classified consistently, but there may be slight changes. It's mass appraisal. It's not single family appraisal. So we don't, so when we follow the provincial rules, just like other municipalities do, and so do Foothills County. So when Foothills County provide us their modeling for comparable properties to Redtail Rise, they give us their market models for those houses in Redtail, for all the annexed properties. They have to stratify and classify and satisfy Alberta Municipal Affairs provincial quality standards with the information they provide them. They are audited, just like we are. There's 2 stages of audit. So the information we receive from Foothills County, their models have already been audited, submitted to the province, have been passed, 2 levels of audit. So we don't question the models we receive from them. We apply them. They've already been scrutinized. So on page 40, this is the original summary report for the subject property as it was annexed into the town. So this is what we entered into the system, and this is just for information and no other reason really. It's representative of the properties in Redtail Rise. And just to show you, so it has the land, market land at the top. As the complainant has referred to, our process is market adjusted depreciated cost. So the process has land and improvements. The improvements being, if you look into there, it has, it says 0050600. That's just the classification of the home. It's classified for Redtail Rise as a custom home. And just as a note to that, this is just a classification. Custom home does not come with a value. We make the value. We could call it an orange, right? So long as all the similar homes are classified similar. We could call that house an average house. If we're using those similar houses in the calculation of the model, the assessment will reflect that activity. The classification of the home does not make the value. It's a label only. Right? That's all it is. It's not, because we call it a custom home, it comes with a value. It doesn't. The garage, we call it a 0300428. That's an average garage. We could call it a custom garage. It's the same garage we would add and classify it for all those homes. Well, for every attached garage in the town. That's what we call it. It's just a garage. It's not a custom garage, it's not a superior garage, it's not a poor garage. It's just a garage, a typical garage attached to a typical house. In this case, a typical house in Redtail Rise. It's not, right, it's the same as all the other houses in Redtail Rise. So that's how that house came from the county. So, because the annexation agreement says it must be assessed on the same basis if it existed in Foothills County. There it is. That's how it's assessed. So we make sure that other houses that are built and exist in Redtail Rise, we're not going to change that because it says must be assessed on the same basis as if it existed in Foothills County. We're not about to change it, right? So that's how it was valued when it came into the town, and I'll refer to the assessment totals later. You can see it's not changed lots. It's just followed the market. Right? It's not like it's not like something exceptional happened to that property. It looks like we did something extraordinary. We're assessing it exactly the same way as if it were existed in Foothills County. So on page 41, the map at the top is a map of the market areas surrounding High River. The High River is the yellow area in the middle on the right hand side. The Redtail Rise, the red square. So in those market areas around High River, those are the market areas within Foothills County. They've got lots of market areas in the county, but these are from them. So I asked them for information regarding sales used for the modeling of assessments of similar. Well, we've got all properties. There are some properties similar to the subject in this list, but I have not asked them. The process of assessment in the county is a lot different. It's regulated in the county. You've got 3 acre sites. You've got farm buildings. You can't take their data and use it as is. Plus, they've already passed audit. If you use these sales and any other, if there's not sales of this like the subject property in this batch, they're going to use information from the nearest market area to High River to establish an appropriate model that's tested and audited by province. It's not for me to contact the county and say, oh, I need these sales. I need you to show me what furnaces you put into that house. I need you to show me what garages. That's not my role for sure. I receive their market information and I apply it to the annex properties to make sure that they reflect the market activity within Foothills County. So on the top of page 42, in the complaint submission, a reference was made to property values relative to servicing. So the annex property was annexed in 2021 and will be assessed as if it's in the county until 2034. In the complainant's original submission, and I've talked to some of the property owners, things in Redtail Rise aren't like they are in town. The roads aren't fully paved, there's dust, there's construction. It's not as it would be if it were completed as a finished development. So my understanding of the annexation process is that that's probably why it's assessed like it's in the county, because it kind of is, right? They're on gravel roads. All these properties on page 41, they're not on paved roads. They don't have wells, they don't have servicing, they don't have sidewalks, they don't have bridges, they don't have pavement, like paved access to the Town High River. They're annexed. Like that's why the annexed properties don't reflect market activity as if they're in town, because they're not assessed like they're in town. And I'll get to that. So annexed properties, they don't have snow removal. That's on top of page 42. They don't have street sweeping. They don't have paved roads. Well, they have water and sewer, but that's how they came to the town. They don't have pedestrian access, all public amenities. I get it, they don't. That's why we don't assess them like they're in the town. I'm not saying as the assessor, I'm just saying this is what we're directed to do. The annexation agreement says we don't assess them like they're in town, very likely because they don't have these servicing. And to add to that, on the assessment summary, if you scroll down the page a bit there, Jody. So this is too much detail, likely, but see, that's why I'm surprised I'm accused of not being transparent, because I'm probably guilty of sharing too much information. But on this assessment summary, the bottom three assessment codes, annex residential, annex non-res, annex farmland, they even have their own group. They're not part of the residential properties or assessment code 2, condos or assessment code 5, you'll see them there, the number of properties. Annex properties aren't part of the town's market mass appraisal process. That's why they're not on the community changes, because they're not part of the town. I don't control that. I'm responsible for some of the changes that didn't happen, and that's on me, right? I'll get to that as well. But the annex properties are separate. They're assessed just like we're told to assess them on the annexation agreement. And for reference, on other annexed properties in High River, the 2002 annexation properties and 2012. And as I made reference to, the 2012 properties are annexed, and they're just where Anna's cookies are, around the north of the town and down the side, and along the top, north of Eagle View. They're being annexed this year. So this year will be the first year assessed, and they'll be taxed like they're in Town High River next year. So that for them, that annexation agreement will cease. But we'll be talking to every one of them too. So on page 43, I've got some comparable properties to the subject. So the third property at the top, assessed at $1,060,500. If you take the value of the property divided by the square footage of the house, we get $579 a square foot. And I apologize, I should have had a map showing these houses, but all these houses are on the west side of Redtail Rise. So all different size parcels. There are some adjustments to size of parcels, size of house. They're not identical. We didn't find a house that was exactly the same size as the complainant's house, and we couldn't come up with an assessment if we couldn't find a house of the exact same size and same style of construction. These are, if you want to call them custom homes, but they're typical homes in Redtail Rise. They're not cookie cut, these houses. I think that will be clear, right? We're not building 1,000 square foot homes in Redtail Rise. And if there was, well, we'd have to have valuation, they'd have to be valued separate. Right? If these were called average houses, those would have to be called something else. Average plus or average negative, right? So these are homes that similar to the subject property. We could call them custom homes, we could call them average homes. For the intent of mass appraisal, these are identical homes. We would consider them custom homes because that's what they are in Redtail Rise. But again, it's a label only. The custom doesn't give them the value. So for these comparables, 207 Redtail Rise is assessed, overall assessment at $718 a square foot. 227 Redtail Rise is assessed at $630 a square foot. 305 Redtail Rise is assessed at $602 a square foot.
That's wrong.
And 219 Redtail Rise is assessed at $568 a square foot. The difference in values is due to the size, level of base and finish, plumbing, different data elements that make them different from one another, with the average assessment per square foot for these homes using the being valued as if it in Foothills County is $650 a square foot. So it gets to show that subject property is being valued using value modeling from Foothills County consistently with similar properties in Redtail Rise. On page 44, it shows the subject property at the top, and it shows 3 sales that have occurred in Redtail Rise. It shows that, I'll just take the first one for instance, this is 206 Redtail Ridge. It's 1,770 square feet with 1,400 square foot base and finish with an attached garage. It's assessed at $941,400. It's sold in 2023 for $950,000, and if it were valued if it was the adjusted sale price to reflect the value as of July the 1st, 2025 is $1,066,700. So it shows the assessment is 88% of that time of that July 1 adjusted selling price. So overall, the assessments of the properties in Redtail Rise are not assessed if we're in town. If these properties were in town, our valuation model would have to be between 95 and 105%, as in the quality standards we have to follow. So they're not assessed as if they're in town, and this shows that it would seem reasonable that that level of assessment would reflect an assessment in the county. So just to conclude, well, before I conclude, I just want to go to page 46, because I need to speak to this. Again, this hasn't been mentioned in this hearing yet, but it's the original information that I responded to in the complainant's disclosure. But it was brought up, well, it might not have been brought up in here actually. I know I've been mentioning it. Oh, it was in the original complaint about the change. So I included this on page 46 because it was something that occurred due to how our mass appraisal process communicates or receives information from the same mass appraisal process used by the county. For the 2003 assessment year and 2004 assessment year, we were unable to match or apply the market modeling from Foothills County for those 2 years. So you'll see, I'm not suggesting anything in this. It's just a fact. So we all know the market went through substantial changes during those years. I as the appointed assessor, in hindsight, I had no idea the market was changing in the way that it was. So at that time, we could have estimated an adjustment for that time period, but we decided to take the information from the county, or not. We didn't make an appropriate adjustment. So for those 2 years, the assessment didn't change. But this year, there was a significant increase. So the market you see now, if we go back to page 44, with the assessment being at, I don't know what the median is, probably about 88% of the market. So it shows that for the 22 and 23, it was less than that. So we didn't make an adjustment, and that's on us. But that's why the market went up so substantially for this year. And just to go to page 47, this is just from the Foothills County website. So it just shows for the period of 22 to 25 this year, substantial changes. occurred to their property assessments too. We didn't reflect that in the annex properties, and not just Redtail Rise, all the annex properties. So that's why there were significant changes. And we will improve. When I finally was able to match correctly the values in Foothills County this year, I realized at the time there were substantial changes. I could have sent out letters, but that was the end of February. We just decided to leave it as there's not much I could do about it at this point. But my responsibility is to make sure the assessments are correct. And I guess it's my judgment call to kind of go, well, I'm not going to guess for 22 and 23. I'll leave it as is, right? And I'll give the annex properties the benefit of the doubt. That was the call made. So just to conclude, the assessment of properties in Redtail development is bound by the conditions specified in the 2021 annexation agreement and must be assessed as if it's still within Foothills County until 2034, not 24. Based on the sales activity within Foothills County in the localized areas surrounding High River, through the use of the directive sales approach and mass appraisal, valuation models are created and applied. These valuation models are statistically tested and must meet legislative quality standards, in this case within Foothills County. Subsequently, through the sharing of the value model coefficients with the town of High River, the assessed values within the Redtail development must reflect this market activity. The subject property is assessed as a custom home as initially annexed and is valued consistently with similar properties within Redtail Rise. Through the use of sales from July 1, 2022 to the June 30th, 2025, the overall median assessment to sales ratio for homes similar to subject property indicates the subject property is fairly assessed compared to current market sales. It is the assessor's recommendation that the 2025 assessment of the subject property be confirmed as $1,060,500. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Scott, do you have any questions?
I do. So our first meeting, Stuart, you made mention that there was a book used in 2021 or 2001 with Foothills County book. It was a assessment book. You mentioned to me that there was a mistake made and the book was not used correctly. That's not what you're saying today. You're saying in hindsight, we decided, we need to improve. I realize that, but you didn't mention that what you said today at all correctly. Second, building assessments are done on properties on a 4-stage process or 5-stage process. My property is assessed by the assessors during those stages. Nothing changed in my property. There's a first stage of construction for building envelope that Les Ripple does. There's a foundation, there's a structural, there's all those other things are done. All those stages were done. Nothing changed in my property, and I did nothing since Les Ripple built it. The basement was developed at around 60%. You're saying the basement's fully developed. I don't think that any of those pictures are relevant, to be honest. You didn't take a picture of my custom furnace. There's no difference in that furnace whatsoever than any other furnace in Redtail. So I didn't feel that was relevant at all. Willing sales and willing buyers, you assessed and gave us reference to all properties in Redtail, none in other areas of Foothills County. I don't understand why. I mean, you're saying some of that, but there's none of them assessed in there other than our homes in Redtail. Similar properties sold in the area, and why are you assessing them all now? What was the missing that happened back when they were supposed to be assessed way back? You mentioned in your speaking, we do not represent Foothills County. Do you assess Foothills County properties? No. Foothills County gives us models. You do not assess Foothills County properties, so that doesn't make sense to me why that's even mentioned. It's irrelevant. And let's just see here, a couple of other things. The assessment change that reflected this property was an increase of 84%. I felt that if you're saying that you should have let us know prior to that, I think a lot of us residents would have appreciated the notice of 84% increase. And I believe that's all I have questions about.
So do you have any answers?
Oh yeah, just the math, yeah, I've already asked for the math, but there's no math.
Stuart, do you have any answers to these questions?
So it's a massive part of the process. We don't, I'm not the assessor for Foothills County. Right, that I receive, they follow provincial rules like we do. And their models have to meet quality standards for the, with the auditor. For the submission to submit their annual roll to ASSET, which is the Assessment Shared Services Environment that we submit our assessment information to. It's like every municipality. We don't, it's not, and I did get a list, there is a list of property sales provided to us by Foothills County. So I did receive a list from them. I don't question what Foothills County give me because they're already audited. They have an appointed assessor who's responsible for their assessment. And just while it's in my, I'm going to miss some answers here. With regards to the change, I had no idea at the time for 23 and 24 the market was going to do what it's going. I could have sent a letter out saying the market's going to change. I'm not able to reflect it. The issue we had in synchronizing the value models from the county to the town of High River, it just took some time to work that out. So I guess erred on the side of caution. That's what I did.
That is not what I was told in my first meeting. I was told that we used the wrong book. Foothills County had a book, I don't know what it's called an M something. Building code thing book. That book was used incorrectly. It was not updated, it was not used correctly from 2001. And then we hear that, we realized that the books had nothing to do with new market value, nothing said about market value, is the fact that we made a mistake. 84% mistake.
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
So, see, here's what I'm guilty of, is sharing too much information. At this hearing, I'll explain what it is, but I explain coefficients, things say, I explain a lot, I explain everything to these good people. But we don't, for the purpose of this appeal, we don't get into that detail, because we don't have to for this hearing. We're here to talk about total values. So I'll explain it in a nutshell. We use everyone who uses Camelot, which is our mass appraisal property assessment system, uses a base manual. We use a residential manual. The base manual we've all been using up until probably 3 or 4 years ago, I'm sure you'll be aware of this, was a 2001 residential manual. So we all assess properties using the cost to build new in 2001. We index it up to reflect the cost new in whatever the assessment year is. So cost new, we depreciate it for age or any other forms of depreciation. Then we take that depreciated cost, we apply a market model factor to it to reflect the marketplace. That's the mass appraisal system. 3 years ago, they rolled out a brand new a residential manual, 2021 cost. So the county changed to that manual in 23. That was their first year. We didn't change onto that manual until this year because we had some issues synchronizing that and setting it up in our system. It requires lots of checking, making sure that if there's any differences between using one manual to the other, we're able to take care of that. If we don't do it properly, chaos could occur, would beyond our control. So, as I said to the complainant, and all you good folks, I've explained this to them, we used the market factor adjustment from the county to be applied to a 2021 cost, to a 2001 base cost. So it basically, as you can see, the assessment didn't change. So that was our, and to make an adjustment, how do I make an adjustment to change from a 2001 cost manual to a 2021 manual? So like I said, you know what, we're just gonna let this go. I had no idea the market was gonna change to the extent that it has. That was a judgment call. I think it was a reasonable call at the time. I had no idea that it would result in a substantial change for this year. So the purposes of this presentation of information to the Assessment Review Board is to talk about the current assessment. We typically don't talk about the change. But I'm being transparent, explaining that process and the concerns raised. This still hasn't been discussed yet, raised in the complainant's disclosure. I'm trying to be accountable to the change. Why did it happen? And I believe I've done the best I can. I've had a lot of annex properties in. Annex property owners in to talk to me. I've been totally transparent. I did not describe the issue with the change at the board as I did with all of you good people, because that's not what we do here. We don't even usually talk about the change. We talk about the current assessment. Is it fair and equitable? Is it applied consistently? Does it reflect market value? We've followed what the practices we've used. We've adhered to the whatever's laid out in the annexation agreement. We followed that. We've ensured the property is assessed consistently with Foothills County and applied their market modeling appropriately as reflected in the assessment. That's our responsibility to the board and to the complainant. And so the other questions raised in the rebuttal, a lot of this is like the fairness and all of those things, I guess, the details that make up the final value. That's just part of the mass appraisal process. It's not a finite level of assessment. It represents the typical value of a group of properties. That's our responsibility as the assessors. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so we're a little bit off the rails in terms of the process. What I'd like to do is I'd like to give Scott a chance. Part of what you gave us was some of your rebuttal.
I have a closing, yeah.
And that's not the closing.
No,
You
okay,
have an
sorry.
opportunity to rebut.
Well, I
And
just,
then Stuart's gonna,
the comment about we're just gonna let this go sure was obviously an impact of the whole residential area. As you can see, this is only half of the group that have been coming in to see the appeals process. They missed the appeals, half of them are out of country, and the town sends their assessment the month prior, and then some of it's mailed, some of it's sent. Some of them didn't even get it because they're out of country. I know that's their responsibility, but this is not the end of it for those that are appealing for next year, just so you're aware of that.
okay, so what we'd like to do is, I should ask my colleagues, do you have any questions?
I do have some, yeah, through the chair. Yeah. My first question is, I just overheard somebody say that assessment adjustment on 305 Redtail was incorrect.
Very incorrect.
What was the value?
The square footage is wrong. They have as sauna in our basement. Our basement was unfinished at the time the house was built. I don't know where they got their numbers or the details from. I have applied for all of the information. I have yet to receive anything back. It's been almost a month and I haven't got any math. I haven't got any confirmation of anything. So thank you for letting me address that. I want to see the math. Nobody is showing us the math. And you're the agent for the Foothills. So You cannot say that you're not responsible for those numbers. That is your responsibility. You are acting as an agent. I pay the town of High River my
So
taxes.
I can interrupt. We're speaking through the chair.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're not speaking directly.
I apologize.
Thank you.
I've never done this before.
Thank you for clarifying that. My second question is, on the first assessment, you identify, as you had indicated, Scott, the forced air furnace as standard, and on the second, you identified it as custom, although it wasn't highlighted as a change to the assessment. I'm more curious if there's a definition of custom versus standard.
We just, in the original assessment, it came from the county as low-level finish, which is, it's applied a different area on the assessment, and so it was added as base and finish, because that's how all the other base and finish is added. And when we added the base and finish, that furnace classification kind of comes along with that. So it's just to keep it consistent with how some of the properties are assessed within Redtail Rise.
So it becomes custom because of the area?
It's still heat, it's still heat,
Yeah.
it's a minor, it was made, we're getting into the weeds here with details, right? It's just heat.
It's just incorrect.
It's just heat, it's just a label, these are all mass appraisal, these are labels that come with that. I've worked in Cochrane, for instance, they don't use market adjusted costs, they just use multiple regression analysis. So we don't even assess heat or plumbing because houses just come with it. So that's kind of what happens here, right? It's a mass appraisal process, it's just heat. Whether it's whether it's custom heat or average heat, it's heat that comes with the house.
So what you're saying is, as you assess every home in Redtail, every house in Redtail is gonna have custom furnaces? That's what you're saying? And they're not custom furnaces, it's just a furnace. It's like the bathroom, it's called custom. The shower is a plastic shower from Home Hardware. How is that custom? My cabinets are made by Ken Wagner. What's the difference of custom between that and a custom cabinets in Calgary? They're not custom. Senator Scott Tanis's house in High River sold for $1.4 million. That's a custom house. Built by Les Rimple, I referenced it in my manual. Why are we not using homes referenced in High River? There are many homes in High River that sold for $1.2 million that are custom homes. Custom rock, custom everything. Not like these homes in Redtail. Not one of the homes in Redtail, I've walked through all of them. Not one of those homes in Redtail I would consider custom homes. Maybe the doctor's a little bit of some custom, but that's it. Sorry.
No, you're okay. I just want to finish up with the questions, and we're going to give Stuart his closing opportunity. Any more questions?
Where are semi-customs besides Redtail? Custom and semi-customs in High River is Montrose, custom, semi-custom. Do we have semi-custom?
For sure, yeah, absolutely. And again, we're consistent with the use of the classifications in town. There are custom homes speckled all over town. They're not unique to a development. But there are some custom homes, there's semi-custom homes in Montrose, and there's average homes in Montrose. And same as even in Sunshine Meadows, the ones around the lake are higher end homes, right around Sunshine Lake. They're considered. We have them as semi-custom homes around the lake, but they're classified consistently within the communities, right? And modeled consistently within the communities. So there are different property types all through the town. We do the modeling we do is by community and by the classification of the homes within each community.
So is it laid out somewhere? Is it defined? What does, because I actually looked this up, and they gave me a definition about the architecture, the finish level, those kinds of things. However, no. I just wonder, when you talk semi-custom, custom, what are you talking about? Because I've heard it said today that all these homes are just homes. And then I've also heard there's different communities, different parts of town that have different kinds of houses in them. So maybe you could clarify for me what that means in terms of assessment.
Want me to- I can try and add my 2 cents a little bit.
Sure.
Now, it is subjective as to classification to the assessor. Now, you look at quality, essentially, the quality of home. The Scott's, beautiful home. It's a, and its finish is very nice. Now, we looked across the road and a bit of a smaller home. I obviously don't have it in front of us or anything. A little more, boxy, just not quite the same house as Scott's. So what we try to do is we try to classify each and every home so that we are comparing apples with apples and oranges with oranges. We try not to mix those too much. Windows, essentially, you look in the back, that's a huge cost. Now, if we're trying to reflect these minor details, but they're well, kind of major details, but we're trying to separate the two, and to the best of our ability. So, yeah.
Yeah, like Ron says, it's the doors and windows of the house, vaulted ceilings, usually 9-10 foot ceilings. In a custom home, you get lots of space, a lot more space. They're typically larger. Although these days, they're even building smaller custom homes now, just because of the changes in the market. Where you used to be able to build a pretty good house for $500,000, where it's become more of an average house. But for custom homes, like Ron says, big windows, big doors, lots of open areas. Just better fit and finish to the house. Like I said, that's why I referred to the building permit for Scott's house. In 2018, it was a $700,000 home. So it's indicative of the kind of home that is. And we have an average house in town, like the base house, an average house even as, there's not much difference between an average semi-custom and a custom home. Oftentimes when we model them separately, and sometimes the modeling will be very, very, very close, like especially for the higher end homes. But like Brandon says, we stratify the homes. We have to recognize there's different kinds of homes. So they're modeled separately. We don't make the market, we just follow it. So we stratify the housing types. We build models for each of those housing types, and then value reflects accordingly. So they're banded according to the classification of the homes.
Another one?
Yeah, Camelot, tell us about Camelot then, and this manual.
Well, it's just a mass appraisal, mass appraisal, cost-assisted mass appraisal system. So it's a CAMA system. So we classify the homes. That's right. We classify all the homes in town. So everything from a mobile home to a custom home, right? And all in between. So we classify them. We could classify everything on one band, but that would be but it wouldn't be appropriate, right? We can't run a value model for one type of property. So we have to stratify all the homes from the smaller older houses in the southwest and the water tower area, to the new homes in Sunshine Meadows and the northwest, and for homes in Redtail Rise too. We don't, again, I've talked to the Foothills County about the classification of Redtail Rise, and I've talked to them, Brennan and I have talked to them, and they classify those houses in the county as custom homes. That's what they label them as. So because, that's why I have the original assessment classification of the home. And when it came from Redtail, it came from Foothills County, it came as a custom home. So it says must be assessed as if it's in the county. My hands are kind of tied, right? So so whether we could assess a similar house in town as a semi-custom home, but that wouldn't be assessed as if it's in the county. The annexation agreement says must be assessed as if it's in the county. So it's identified by the county and it's an annexation agreement, and for the purpose of the assessment review board hearing, we're required to make sure the assessment reflects within an appropriate range the valuation of the home. Not at the end of the day, is the valuation of the home at market value. And there's a market value at 80% of the value for similar properties selling in the Redtail Rise is at 88%. It's not the town of Harvard, but so at the end of the day, we're not talking about the furnaces. We're talking about the value of the property. We can get into the nuts and bolts of the details of the assessment. I have all time in the world to talk to them about, and with the property, I've talked to you about the size of the house. We're gonna fix that. I've been kind of busy. We can't change this year's assessment. But I told you, I'll make you that promise. We're gonna come and we're gonna get it right? And that was a building plan, but we didn't do that on purpose, right? Just to speak to that. So, at the end of the day, we're talking about the value. We're following the foothills classification. We're using their model from their sales. We're following as what's laid out in the annexation agreement. My hands are tied with lots of things. If I value them, if they're in town, that's wrong, right? That's not what I'm supposed to do.
Mr. Leefrick,
Yes, sir.
you're referencing the Camelot manual. Is that the reference of what you're talking about from the 2001 Foothills manual? I don't believe that's what he explained to you.
No, it's not mine.
Yeah. Sorry, second, on our properties in Redtail Rise, number 321 in Redtail Rise is a resident that is here. That is semi-custom classification. And yet it's all referenced that all these homes in Redtail are custom homes. That is referenced in their assessment as semi-custom. So why?
Is there a dollar value?
And what's that?
Is there a dollar value attached to that name?
Yes, and a dollar value attached to the name.
Yes, there are a few, Brandon mentioned that there are a few semi-custom homes in Redtail Rise.
But you mentioned it several times earlier.
No, I'm talking about you.
Let me finish. You mentioned several times in this meeting that all the homes in Redtail are custom homes. Panel, did you not hear that? Yes. Every furnace is a custom furnace. So what's the difference between semi-custom and custom then? If this house is classified as custom, number 321, semi-custom,
So that's.
it's inconsistent.
I don't.
And we're just getting into a lot of discussion and weeds that are not even relevant.
I hear you. We're gonna wrestle with it all.
Not even relevant.
In the process. Stuart, you get your final word. Have you had it or?
Yeah, I think I'm done, Mr. Chairman. I think you heard enough from me.
Okay.
Well, actually, just real quick,
Go ahead, Brandon.
sorry, something very, so, to your, building permit, Scott, we have that, your house was built
700.
for how much? Stu, do you know what?
That's an estimate of less rental, so it's on the building permit of 700,000. And you know, another thing that's not mentioned is real estate deals listed on it.
Can Brandon speak, please?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so.
You're gonna get the last.
Yeah.
So, no, yeah, it's an estimated value, 700,000. The past, okay, so yes, the assessment went up to $1,060,000. The previous 2 years, if you look back on page 46, we have the assessment at 751,600. and the year prior, 2023, was 751,600. So, what was the year built on your home, Scott?
2018.
2018? Would you agree that the assessment would increase over these years? Oh, I'm sorry, Chair.
Go ahead.
Would you agree
Finish
that
your
the
thought.
assessment would increase over the years, more than 50,000?
And leave that with us, I guess.
I don't think we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the rebuild of the house. What does the house cost to rebuild? That's the assessment of the property.
That's
And
replacing.
obviously, the replacement cost of the house. What does it cost to rebuild that house? I did the calculation. It's gonna cost me $350,000 more to rebuild that house today, according to their assessment, as it was when I built it. That just does not make sense. How does wood and materials cost that much more money in that period of time? I mean, I know things have went up, but that much? 84% increase on tax assessment? And I'm not the only one. We're talking the whole area was wrongly assessed.
Question?
Chair.
Yeah, we need them all out there if they're gonna be here. Go ahead.
You indicated 84% in this discussion, but your appeal documentation indicated 42%.
And that's because it's the assessment value that's provided the month prior, which is just the tax assessment notice.
Okay, so
And
for
then
the,
afterwards comes another one from the town where school taxes, all the other taxes get put on. So a lot of people look at that and go, yeah, okay, as we said, properties increase, but then all of a sudden, boom, it's up another double than that. That was the concern. And then a lot of people missed it. A lot of people missed the tax appeals date of May 15th.
But, may I just,
Sorry.
taxes and assessment, this board cannot do anything about taxes. And you
We-
have to
we know
realize, you all have to realize that. The
And-
assessment is, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and we have addressed that with our MLA as well as the Minister of Finance as well.
Okay, so where are we at?
I have my closing, and then that's all I
You're
got.
okay with that?
I think so, Mr. Chairman. I think I've covered most of what I wanted to present in our submission. I guess in the respect of the time we have, and I think I've talked enough about how the assessment reflects the county and equity and market value within Redtail Rise. So I appreciate your time, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott, last word.
So thank you for your time, everyone. We the complaint, my wife, I'm sorry, is not here, accept the legitimate factual corrections such as the slight increase in the basement developed and other variable improvements. However, the respondent has not demonstrated through adjusted market sales that the assessment reflects market values as of July 1st, 2025. Furthermore, the respondent has not disclosed the underlying foothills values, calculation chain, grading schedule, scoring criteria, component valuation, details, or quantified adjustments necessary to understand the subjective changes that occurred following the site inspections on June 23rd, 2026. Without that information, we, the complainant, cannot meaningfully test whether the assessment reflects market value or merely reflects discretionary changes within the assessment model and valuation process. Thank you.
Okay, so does everyone feel that they've had a fair opportunity to present their case to the board here? consult, because you got an opportunity. Okay, so with that, then, I will conclude this hearing. This hearing is now ended. So you have all given me your time in accordance with provincial legislation